Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Fantastic to see everybody here today. My name is Zach Sorrells. I'm with Skillfluence, and I'm going to be taking you on this journey today with my colleague Rachel Clark, who you also see here in Skillfluence Blue. Before we get started, it would be great to just see who all's in the room. So in the chat box, if you could just say hello. What's your name, job title, and why are you here today? Not in a philosophical, spiritual sense, but what are you hoping to gain from today's hour? Great, nice to see you, Laura, Natasha, excellent. Good to see you, Lynn. Glad you can make it. And as you're go ahead and add your introduction in there, we're going to go ahead and get started. But it's good for everybody to see who all's in the room. First of all, I would like to genuinely thank you for taking the time to be here today. I know how busy people are, especially with summer and holidays and things out there. So the fact that you've decided to take an hour out of your life and to spend it with us today, genuinely appreciate that. And we are going to do our absolute best to make sure this 1 hour is extremely valuable and useful for you, right? So that's my commitment to you, is that I'll make every effort possible to make sure that you go away from this and go, man, that was an hour well spent. Okay, so that's the goal here. Just a really quick introductions before we get started. My name is Zach Sorrells. I'm the CTO and head of program development at Skillfluence. Basically, what I do is I spend time speaking with our university customers and clients to understand their problems and challenges and opportunities related to KE commercialization and impact. And then I work to design programs that help to address and solve some of those challenges. It's a fascinating, complex challenge, but very rewarding at the same time. So I've talked enough. I'll pass it over to Rachel, and Rachel can introduce herself.
Thanks, Zach. My name is Rachel Clark, Chief Operating Officer and lead on KE and Impact here at Skillfluence. I run operations, but also dip in and talk to our fantastic customers and bring my lived experience of 15 years professional services from the University of Strathclyde here to Skillfluence. So great working with the team and alongside Zach.
Great, thanks, Rachel. Again, so Rachel and I are going to kind of be co-hosting this today, and kind of just a little bit of a kind of just to set the scene on this. So Rachel and I, along with the rest of the team here at Skillfluence, we talk a lot about, sometimes too much, I get told that a lot. We talk a lot about commercialization, knowledge exchange, impact, these types of things, right? We're out there speaking with our clients and partners all the time around this. And what today is really designed to do, what this webinar is really designed to be, is an extension of that conversation. Okay, it's just in a slightly different format, not as interactive as we would normally like a conversation, but it's supposed to feel like a conversation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of take us through some kind of principles and frameworks, and Rachel's going to help kind of bring this to life with some of her lived experience. Okay, and then you guys we're going to ask you to interact in the chat box occasionally, just to help to bring it to life and get your perspective to make it relevant for you. Now, as conversations go, you don't always know where they're going to end up, right? So most cases, not all cases, it goes to somewhere interesting and valuable. Hopefully that will be the case today, but it's a live, fluid conversation. So kind of just see where it goes, and hopefully it is valuable for you guys. So for some of you, a lot of you guys out there will have worked with Skillfluence before. You know of Skillfluence, so this might be something you've heard before. But for those of you who are new to Skillfluence, what is it that we do, right? Our mission in life is to help researchers create maximum socioeconomic value, maximum socioeconomic impact and value from their research while achieving their life and career goals. And the way by which we do this is we develop and deliver programs that equip researchers with the tools, skills, and confidence that drive increased levels of knowledge exchange, commercialization, and impact. And we've been around for about 8 years. We've trained more than 25,000 researchers, PhD students, academics, professional service staff. We've got a large team of trainers. We work with more than 80 universities across the UK and in Europe. And the red pins on this map are the universities with whom we've worked with. And you might see a red dot where you are today. So we've been around a bit, and we work with a wide range of universities across the country. Okay. So enough about us. Let's get into today's webinar. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be focused around the topic of translating KE policy to practice. Okay. And we've kind of framed this in the context of almost 5 key questions. That if we can answer these questions, if we can start to provide answers to these questions, it will help us to better understand the challenge of translating policy to practice, and also help us to better develop more effective solutions to that big challenge. Okay, the 5 key questions that we're going to really explore. 1, why don't researchers engage with knowledge exchange more fully? Okay. Number 2, how do we develop a cohesive program that delivers against strategic KPIs for the institution? 3, what program should we be offering and for whom in order to achieve maximum ROI? 4, how do we create a meaningful state change in researchers in the context of knowledge exchange? And 5, what is the process for developing an effective, scalable approach? And as we go through these questions, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be providing you with specific frameworks, principles, methodologies that you can use straight away. And so as a bonus from today, right, a lot of what we do, everything that we do is action-oriented. We're going to help answer these 5 questions, but also give you 7 specific steps, 7 specific actions that you can take this week. Right, there's 2 days left in this week, right, that you can start taking right away to implement some of what you've learned. Sound good? 1 in the chat box if you're like, yeah, that's awesome, I want some of that. 2 if you're like, nah, I'd rather not. That doesn't sound very interesting to me. Are we getting any 1s, Rachel? All right, good. If you put a 2 in there, if you put a 2 in there, you can feel free to leave. It's okay. You won't take offense. That's all right. Excellent. Okay, cool. Shall we get started? All right, let's do it. Okay. So the backdrop to this, right? How did we get here? So Rachel and I have been working really closely together over the last 12 months, out really exploring and conducting discovery. Just engaging with the sector and speaking with people, and we've done it with purpose. The purpose is really to understand what are the problems as related to knowledge exchange and implementing and developing kind of effective practice. What are those root causes, and how might we address them? And over the past 12 months, we've had more than 100 conversations with kind of professional service staff, management level, leadership at different universities. We've conducted more than 50 formal interviews with researchers to understand what works, what doesn't work, what are some of the challenges. We've run 5 different pilot programs, and we've received more than 1,000 surveys and evaluations from participants in programs. So today, this webinar is really a consolidation of that 12 months worth of learning into kind of what we believe to be the most impactful bits, the most useful bits. Okay. So we're going to give to you the 12 months of learning and what we've learned through that process. Okay. So this is a difficult challenge, right? So the collective we, right? A policy has been developed which says fundamentally knowledge exchange is important. Thou shalt increase levels of knowledge exchange, right? It's an important thing to do. At a government level, it's happened, and then at an institutional level. And it's been given to you, to us, to say, well, how do you do that? Great, I got this piece of paper that says this is an important thing to do, but how do we actually do it? And this is the challenge, to translate that policy to practice. So I ask you guys in the chat box, why is this difficult for you? Why do you feel it's a difficult thing to do? Just love to hear your perspectives on that, and then we'll share some of our perspectives. Why is this difficult? Or maybe it's not.
I think it's even difficult to put into words.
I tell you what, while we're it's starting to come, just a little delay, Cool, good. Good. K is categorically distinct from research. Yeah, academics have different incentives, goals. Good. Understanding capacity, getting senior level buy-in. I could go on. Yeah, right. How many do we want? Right. What policy? Okay. Yeah. Cool. Let's keep them coming. And as those are coming through, and we'll kind of feed into this. So, Rachel, I know you've got some kind of unique perspective on this. I wonder if you could just share your thinking as to, why do you feel this is a difficult challenge that we're facing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to having that challenge back at the university and seeing that come to life with our customers here. Professional services staff have a huge responsibility. The KE Concordat drops, the institution creates new KE outputs that they have to deliver. But as our audience will know, they themselves can't make knowledge exchange happen and go up without influencing researchers. And that's one of the hardest things to do. So it's a translation piece. Just because the Concordat says that KE has to go up, a researcher's not going to know about it, care about it. So how do you as professional services create the right environment, provide the right resources to translate the environment, the culture of the institution to help researchers actually drive those knowledge exchange outputs up? So it's about what can you put in place to change a behavior of a researcher? That is a really difficult position to be in, and you will have one small part of an institutional role to play. That's why I think it's difficult.
Yeah, right. So kind of to kind of summarize and bring that together and to segue into the next bit here is that you sitting in the room today, you aren't the ones doing it, right? What you're doing is you're influencing others. You're attempting to change the behaviors of others who will then deliver that, right? And so that creates a different type of challenge. That becomes very much a behavior change challenge. So framing this challenge as how do we create an environment for, right? The situation for, the support for driving behavior that leads to the KE outputs that we want. We look at it from a behavior change challenge. And what we found as we've been kind of out exploring, we were trying to understand this, and we kind of came across a model which really started to help us understand how to think about this a little bit differently. So if we think about behavior and any behavior change or sustained behavior, and specifically in the context of knowledge exchange, the model that we came across said you need to have these three key things. You have motivation, right? So first off is I have to want to do it. If I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it, right? It's not going to happen. So motivation. Capacity. I need to have the time or resources to do it. I may want to do it, but I don't have the time. How am I going to do it? And I need the skills. I need to know how to do it. I need to want to do it. I need to have the time to do it, and I need to know how to do it. And if any of those three things aren't present, sustained behavior change doesn't take hold, right? So this was like, okay, interesting model, but it's not validated, right? It's like this kind of when we saw it, it was like, there's something here. This kind of makes sense. And then what we did is we started doing the interviews with researchers to kind of really understand what they were saying. And what we found is the responses mapped extremely well into these three kind of buckets. The responses were fundamentally about, I don't want to do it. I don't have the motivation. I don't have the time or resources, and I don't know how. Now, this is really important because there was an aha moment here where it was like, oh, wait a second. this is starting to explain a little bit about why maybe this program isn't working so well, or this is working, and why people are engaging or not engaging. It started to make sense. And that started to inform how we would do things, right? So I would just kind of maybe get your perspective in the chat box. When you think about this and you think about the community, let's say, that you support and serve, that you're trying to drive KE with, where do you feel are the biggest challenge areas? Is it a motivation challenge? Is it a capacity challenge? Is it a skills challenge? And you can only pick one for this exercise. Where do you think the primary? I know it's all, right? Fundamentally, it's all. But what's the one primary one, do you think, that you're feeling? Oh, capacity, capacity, capacity. Capacity, capacity, capacity. Yeah. I don't have time. I don't have time. Right? Interesting. I think this is good. This is really good. So, keep these coming. But I'm gonna kick it over to Rachel because this is kind of, again, it's a simplistic model, but as you start to dig into it, you find some really interesting things. The deeper you kind of explore it, there's nuances to it. And Rachel, maybe you could share some of your thinking around some of maybe the nuances of the triangle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple of key things for me to take away from this is quite often people come to us asking for skills training, and which is a great place to start. But when you start digging deeper about what it is and what the skills are, and have the luxury to talk to the learners, actually that understanding about how important motivation and capacity is as a balance is actually really interesting to how then you design the skills program. But just picking up on the motivation piece, we found that a lot of the researchers were highly motivated to get their research out into the world. Unquestionably, that's why a lot of the people we spoke to were in their research role. So the question was, if the motivation's there, then why are people unable to take KE forward? And it wasn't just about capacity and skills. There was a nuance to the motivation piece, which was, I'm highly motivated, but the routes that are on offer to me, perhaps it's a commercialization, or I feel under pressure to take a spin out forward. That the motivation for that route wasn't there. So there's even a nuance there to the motivation piece, which was really interesting, and only a level of knowledge we could gain from talking directly to the learners.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. I mean, I think it's that, it's kind of like, yes, I am motivated to deliver impact with my research. This is why I got into doing this, right? This is what I want to do. But I'm not overly motivated to pursue the path currently available. Interesting, right? Interesting, because it's like, I want to do it, but the paths and how I have to get there doesn't work for me. So do we need different paths? Do we need different ways to put that together that tap in and leverage that motivation more effectively? Right? Now, this kind of feeds into other things, right? Why this is kind of, as a program designer, I had these kind of light bulb moments with these things, was like, we need to design programs differently than potentially, right? So if the challenge is to around motivation, we need to either be, one, potentially working with people who are already motivated, right? If they're not motivated, good luck, right? It's hard. Or figuring out ways to tap into what does motivate them and understanding that. Okay. Hey, engaging KE. Why? How does that help me get to where I want to be in my life? Connecting the dots. The other thing is, we think about capacity, right? Is who here has extra time? Nobody, right? So we need to be designing programs that are extremely highly sensitive to the reality of people who have no time and no capacity. Long programs could be hard to engage in. Design lean, efficient, to the point, in ways that people who have no time can engage with them more effectively. For example, right? And skills, really focusing on the skills that are most important to getting to the next stage. right? So we could spend hours talking about this, right? But the point here is that understanding that if it's about motivation, capacity, skills, how do we put things together in a way that makes sure that those are all present? Because if they are not, behavior will not stick. It just will not stick. Okay. Makes sense. Next bit. So if the goal then is really around, well, the challenge is to create an environment, deliver program support that leads to sustained behavior that drives KE outputs. What is the behavior that we need to support? What is the right type of behavior? What should we focus on? And so what is the goal? Where do we focus? And a way to start to make sense of this, right, is we start to think about, starting from the point of what are the institutional KPIs? And you guys will have these, right? This is a policy document as much as anything else. And the university, your university will not be that dissimilar than every other university, right? It's these types of things, the varying levels of importance. And your role in this may be a little bit different. Like you may be focusing more on spin outs versus licensing deals versus policy, et cetera. But fundamentally, these are kind of the big buckets, more or less, right? You know this. So using that as a starting point, how do we kind of feed into that? And thinking about it as a talent pipeline, right, is a useful framework to use. Right? So the challenge here is that the individual who might be, and we'll just use spin outs as an example, but I know there's lots of different examples, right? Is, the individual is going to be a spin out founder, might be 5 years away. They might not even be thinking about that as a concept yet, but they got to go through a journey to get there. And we've got to support that journey. And we need to understand how that works. And so starting to map that out relative to whatever your KPI is, right? The journey that leads to KTPs, that leads to Innovate UK grants, that leads to public engagement outcomes will be different. And to map those different journeys out will help us understand how we can support them. And we need something at different phases. So the first stage is we just need awareness and inspiration, getting someone who says, I'm not even interested in this, to be aware of it and interested in pursuing it. Then it's about building confidence, for example, then about taking action, and then about delivering impact. And the types of support that we deliver, and the types of program that we deliver at those different stages will be different to move people through that journey. Why is this useful? Why is this helpful? Because what we can then do is we can look at the KPI and we can look at the journey and we can say, I need a program, I need a mechanism. And this is beyond running a workshop or anything like that. What is the mechanism? What is the tool to effectively increase awareness? Okay, I've got that. Now I need a tool and a mechanism to build confidence. Okay, I've got that. Now I need a tool, et cetera, et cetera. And you can start to see the gaps and the opportunities and the challenges. We can also start to then connect the dots, right? Because those lagging metrics, right, the things that kind of the institutional KPIs that take a long time to get to, we as you might be working at things that are much earlier on. And so we need to be able to connect the dots between the metrics that you're trying to deliver and how they lead to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, so that you can say, look, the work that I'm doing, this is how it feeds into that. And Rachel, I was wondering maybe if you could share just kind of some of your thoughts as to how this kind of comes to life in practice.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a great example when we worked with the Northern Accelerator. So 6 Northeast universities had a gap in their pipeline. So around the building confidence towards taking research out into the real world. So the 6 universities pooled their efforts to bring programming together, and they felt they had a really good offering at the pointy end of the funnel so they could get founders started. They felt they had a good awareness raising approach and there was a lot of interest, but there was that gap in the building confidence zone. And we worked with them to design a program which turned into our research commercialization accelerator, with the whole purpose designed to take those who were commercially curious, so they were leaning forward a little bit after the awareness raising activities, but they did not know how to take something forward. And so we took them through a 7-week journey, commercially curious to commercially confident. And one of the things that we did was build in metrics to baseline where their confidence was before and their confidence was after the program. And that's really key when you understand the pipeline and where you're trying to take people from and to. Having the evidence that we can show here on the screen about how confidence changes with some key KPIs in that commercialization space was really valuable, because then they could go back to their funders to show that there was a really integral piece of this development pipeline for their researchers that would progress them towards perhaps being spin-out founders or taking another commercial route. So it was really valuable.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good example. And I think if we kind of take a step back from the program and really think about how this links to the pipeline thinking, why is it important, right? Because if we determined that the purpose, we with our partners would determine that the purpose of this program, where it sat in the pipeline, was around building confidence. That was decided. It's not awareness raising, right? It's not necessarily taking action, it's building confidence. Why is that important? Because it allows us to design a program that is specifically purpose-built to increase confidence. And we can measure the effectiveness of that. Now, if we had said, right, no, the purpose of this program, it's in the take action phase, for example, it would have been a different program with different metrics, with a different way to evaluate. For example, we'd be measuring how effective was it at getting people to take action. Okay? So getting very clear on whatever that intervention mechanism program is, the purpose of it in the context of that journey allows you to design it very purposefully and also measure its effectiveness to deliver against that. Without that, it can just become this mishmash of stuff, right? It's helping, but specifically, how is it helping? Right? As a someone who's designing programs, it's extremely clarifying when we can define what its purpose is. Almost impossible to deliver with excellence when we can't. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys this question, right? When you think about kind of your KPIs, and this can sometimes be a tough question to answer. So it's okay if you feel like, I'm not sure on this, because when we have conversations with our clients and partners, we always ask this question. And sometimes like, oh, that's a good question. I'm not exactly sure. But until we can answer this, it becomes really difficult to decide what to do and how to do it. What do you think are your top 1 to 3 KPIs? And it's not like necessarily the institutional KPIs, right? It's like, what is your role? What is the KPI that you're trying to deliver in the context of the broader institutional KPI? Love to hear what you guys are kind of focused on from a KPI perspective in the chat box. Where's your focus? What are you driving? And if you're going, I'm not quite sure, that's also interesting. We've worked with universities where there was lack of clarity on that. And part of the process is getting clarity on the KPI. What's your focus? Excellent. Super helpful, Linda, right? Income generation. Okay. If that's the KPI, well, let's figure out a program to go right after that. An approach to go right after that. Yeah. No idea. Not sure the academics know themselves. Opportunity there, Stephanie. Opportunity, right? Good. Right? How you support people on that journey to deliver those different KPIs is going to be different, right? So we get clear on that. Excellent. Okay, let's keep moving. So we promised some actions, right? So here's something that you can do straight away, right? Coming out of this is, if you aren't currently clear on your KPIs, work to get clear on that, right? That's step one. If you are clear on your KPIs, map your existing programs, interventions, mechanisms, whatever they be, in the context of the funnel designed to deliver those KPIs. Like, what do you have for awareness raising? What do you have? How do they all link together, right? Start to map those out and see them. And then when you do that, I will, with almost guaranteed certainty, you will see gaps and opportunities. You'll go, we've got something here, but we don't have something here. We're really good at generating interest, but we don't have the next thing. Or we've got the next thing, we got the support later on, but we don't have the stuff leading up to it. We're not getting enough good opportunities coming through. It doesn't need to be a long exercise, right? Just start to map this out, and almost certainly you'll see some opportunities, okay? Cool. Next question. What programs should we be delivering for whom in order to get the maximum return on investment? And that return on investment would be against your KPI typically, right? So you've got a budget, you're trying to deliver, a KPI and output. How best should you spend that budget, that time, money, resources to deliver that KPI? That's the question, right? Fundamentally, that is the challenge that we're facing, collectively. And a useful framework to start to understand is to start to think about this, right? It's called the talent agency matrix. Right? On the x-axis, you have agency. On the y-axis, you have talent. Every researcher at your university will plot somewhere in this matrix. Okay, so in the top right, these are the individuals that, in the context of KE, they're called game changers. These are the ones you can picture them, right? They're out there doing it, they're rocking it, they're just delivering, right? They're making it happen. They have high levels of agency, they got mindset, they know what rules to break, how to go about it, they're out there doing it. They also have high levels of skill. And so it's that combination of skill and agency that allows them to deliver fantastic results. Bottom right, we have high levels of agency, kind of, the super positive mindset, can-do attitude. Not quite the skill yet. They're there, they want to do it, but they need a little bit of help with the skill to be able to become game changers. Top left, let's call them the frustrated geniuses, and you might be able to picture some of these people. They have all the skill in the world, but kind of low on the agency. I don't have enough time, I don't have enough resources, the boss is in the way, the systems don't work, right? I got the skill, typically might have been around for a little bit longer, right? And then the bottom left, you've got referred to as cogs in the wheel, and kind of low talent, low agency. Now, we can just say, for example, that the goal is to get more game changers, create more game changers. Okay. So the first question is, what are the characteristics of game changers? Because we need to know what they are before we can say, how do we get more of them? Why is it that some people are more effective at delivering these outputs than others? Kind of step one. And then if we think about, we start to plot our kind of community, our researchers in this matrix, and we've got some game changers, we've got some frustrated genius, go-getters, cogs in the wheel. There's another interesting question. If you wanted to deliver a return on your investment in the shortest amount of time, who would you invest that activity in? Who would you invest that resource in? In the chat box, what do you think? Would you be supporting game changers, go-getters, frustrated geniuses, or cogs in the wheel? What do you think? Where would you invest? What do you think? If you had limited resources and you could only invest, and you wanted to get the maximum return on investment, where would you focus your efforts? Which people would you support? Go-getters, game changers. And curious, as you guys are putting in, why? Why did you respond that? Why Claire, did you say go-getters? Why Linda did you say game changers? worth thinking about, right? Worth thinking about. My hypothesis, just a hypothesis, would be probably the easiest to move would be the go-getters, right? But the game changers, they might be sitting there with existing opportunities, and it's like, well, actually, we just need to support them, right? Interesting. Now, the next question to consider is, if you were to kind of think about different types of programming, how would you change the approach to support go-getters versus frustrated geniuses? Where go-getters, the challenge is skills. Frustrated geniuses, the challenge is agency. Those are different types of support, right? So if we're going and saying training for everybody, that will not be the right type of support necessarily for frustrated geniuses, because their issue is not a skills issue. Their issue is an agency issue. And in fact, if you're offering them training, they're probably just going to get annoyed, because they're going to go, skills isn't the issue. Why are you training me? You're missing the point, right? So now this is kind of a simplistic model, right? But the real point here is that we, in order to develop highly effective solutions, programs for specific individuals, we need to go deeper and understand the nuances of those participants, those individuals. It is not an audience of researchers. They are unique and different with different needs. So one of the things that we've started to do is to spend a lot of time developing learner profiles to understand the uniqueness of those different types of people, and then designing programming specifically relevant to that profile based on what they need and where they want to go. Okay. Rachel, I wonder if you could maybe share some thinking around this before I kind of go to the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just looking at the feedback coming through the chat box, and I think, you know, my the joy that I have when we talk about this with customers is actually seeing their faces change, and you can imagine them putting faces on some of those spots and imagining how they might go about helping people differently following this conversation. So I think for me, the real takeaway is the clarity it brings, that, you know, one program, one intervention doesn't suit all, and, you know, that the real value is taking some time to think about the researchers as individuals, and then groups to know how to take things forward. So some fantastic ideas coming through on the chat box, and it is about having those conversations to bring some ideas out.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this is, I'm fascinated by this matrix, and I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and really exploring some different ways to kind of build on this. And one of them is, you know, we talk about this idea of culture change, right? You guys, I'm sure how do we develop a culture that supports knowledge exchange, a culture that supports commercialization? Culture change, right? Yeah, great. How does one measure culture change? How do we know if we've got a culture in 5 years' time that is more supportive of knowledge exchange than it was 5 years ago? Right? And I look at this matrix and I go, this is an interesting potential way to use this, right? If we were to plot our population against this, right, where they are today, and we implement an initiative or initiatives or programs, and we measure again, and we measure again, and we're seeing actually our population is trending to the top right. We are moving to become, right, a community of more game changers. Again, simplistic model, but the principle of it, and thinking about what is the characteristic, how do we support different people in a different way, and how do we measure whether or not we're moving in that direction. So, action. 3 things you could do. 1, take some time to find the characteristics of game changers in the context of whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Who are the people who are doing it well? And what is it that they're doing that allows them to do it well? See if we can find some themes and trends and commonalities. Create learner profiles. So understanding that people are different and the learners are different, and we need different solutions for different people. And the only way we can market effectively and promote effectively and design effectively is by understanding them, understanding their differences. And 3, consider how we might support those profiles differently. What does that specific individual profile need? And there will be several of them. And how do we put together something that is specifically designed to help them get to where they want to get to? Okay. Next thing. Okay, so how do we create a state change? How do we create a state change around this, right? And this is something that as we have really refined our programs and our approach, it's really starting to focus on that specifically. And the key principle here, the key mindset here is that we cannot deliver, KE cannot be delivered through thinking, through sitting in lectures, through studying. It is achieved through doing, through action. So how do we get to action as quick as possible? Right? And what we're finding is that to get people to take action, it really kind of builds around 3 key elements. Clarity of where they're trying to go, what they're trying to achieve. Like if they're sitting there going, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, they're not going to be able to take action. Confidence, right? Say, I'm confident enough to take a step, even if I don't know exactly where this is going to lead. I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm going to take action. I'm going to have the confidence to take a step. And then competencies, the skills they need at that moment to take the step. That's all the competence they need, actually, is enough skill to take the next step. And then the skill to take the next step, right? And keep doing that. This is a different design approach than designing for increased knowledge. They're different challenges. And maybe, Rachel, you could kind of share some of your perspective on this, how this comes to life, and when we think about how we design and develop different programs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it became clear quite early on that you need to create space for people to take action in the skills development time that they've set aside. I think this came under increased pressure with a program we delivered recently called Research to Value. So we took a paired approach. So took a professional services member of staff and a researcher from 6 different Scottish universities on a very quick 4-session program, 90 minutes. And we knew that for this pairing to take action, it would have to be done predominantly in the session. They are not going to find time easily out with the session to meet up and do their homework. We had to really strip the content back in the session, give them the absolute minimum to be able to take action, give them the space to take action. And gosh, the outcomes were really dramatic in such a short space of time. They each defined 3 ideas, did some discovery, selected one, presented it back. There was no drop off over the program. And the feedback was it felt immediately valuable. And this really demonstrated to me how lean you could take a session content to provide that space for action. I think it was a real eye opener.
Yeah, I think that's the key here is that when I know I'm one of the worst for this, right? Is we got to put more in, we got to put more in, we got to put more in. Anybody who's been on some of my programs, you go, Zach, that's pretty jam-packed, right? It's like, and you go, you're doing this wrong, Zach. You're doing this wrong. What is the minimum required to get them to take the action that you want them to take? The minimum. Strip it back, strip it back, strip it back. And when you think like that, you can get pretty far pretty quick. And I think that's the mindset shift, is that it's not about more. This is like the big shift is, it's not more. More is not the issue. It's less. Cut it back, cut it back, cut it back, edit hard. Get to the minimum, right? And when you do that, you can get pretty far in not a lot of time, impressively far sometimes. So action, something you can do. Review your current programs in the context of their effectiveness and inspiring action. Everything should be designed to drive to action. Look at your program and say, how effective would this be at driving to action? Is this about information? At the end of it, does it say, hey, what are the 3 actions that you're going to take? Add that slide. It's all of a sudden become a little bit more action oriented, right? Drive to action, drive to action. And if it's not, it's an opportunity for improvement. Right? Going to drive more towards action. Okay, last thing, and then we're going to start to wrap this up. But this is probably I think one of the most valuable and powerful pieces of what we're thinking about now and approaches, because we are faced with, right, are faced with a extremely complex, multifaceted, difficult challenge, right? With limited resources, with increasing pressure. How do we go about approaching this? How do we unpack it, right? It's like, because it can be overwhelming. It can be like, I don't even know where to start. And this is an approach really built around new product and service development best practices. How do you make something that is highly relevant, highly valuable for customers, for the users, right? The same principles apply. So we have an audience, right? And think about this circle as all of your university community, right? All the researchers, all the professional service staff, everybody there. And what we want to do is we want to get to a situation where everybody is bought into knowledge exchange, knows how to do it, is driving it forward. That's what we mean by a culture of knowledge exchange, right? Everybody's in it and doing it. From where we are today to there, right? A little bit of work to do, So how do we go about approaching it? One method, one approach, one mindset would be, we got to do something for everybody. We got to help everybody. We move everybody forward, right? That is very risky, right? You're going to burn a lot of resources and potentially not make up much impact with anybody. It's going to get diffused. An alternative approach, and the approach that we're deploying with many of our university kind of partners, is pick a very, very specific target audience, almost uncomfortably specific. Like 10, small, 10. Say, what is it that we're trying to achieve, help these 10 achieve? And then we start to develop a program of support that delivers against that specific outcome. Because until we can do it with 10, how can we do it with 100? We got to figure out how to do 10 first. Then what we do is we say, now that we figured it out with 10, we can adapt it and now do it with 20 or 40 or 50. And kind of step it out. Or you then pick another target group and say, this is a different group, right? So this might be researchers in a specific discipline over here. This might be professional service staff over here, right? For example, each playing a different role. And then you step it out, right? But you do this is a long-term generational challenge that we're facing. We need to approach this with that mindset. We cannot just go and say, solve it all. It's impossible. We don't have the resources to do it. It just won't work. But what we can do is pick a spot, figure it out, solve that problem. Then pick another spot, and keep expanding it out. And why is this important if we think about it in the context of culture change? If you try to support everybody, you're not going to make impact with anybody. If you support 10 and you drive for impact, you create case studies, you create momentum, you get people interested. People want to come into it. Start uncomfortably small and deliver impact. Figure out how to do it. Rachel, you might have some perspectives on this.
Sure, I think one of the key things here is this could quite possibly be one of the toughest sells you will have to leadership or your funder to take this approach. So it's really about having the story to tell and illustrate why this is a successful route. Quite often you'll be challenged about value for money. So how many researchers can I train with that pot of money? And it's about having the confidence, and we can help kind of develop that story with you about it's not actually value for money when you talk about somebody taking part in research. It's the value for money in the return from the increased KE output at the end. And for the same investment, deeper engagement with 10 people, I'm 99% sure will guarantee more KE outputs than if you provide a lighter touch program to more people. So the challenge will be the storytelling and the confidence that you need to take that back to the leadership or the funder.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of put it in simple terms, right? When you go to leadership and you say, well, the bums on seats idea, right? It's like, okay, do you want 50 bums on seats? Is that what you want? Or would you rather bringing in £1 million worth of income to the university? Which one do you want? Actually, right? And I think we would probably know what the real answer is. Okay, so it's a question of what are we actually trying to do and what approach is going to be most effective. Okay, don't go anywhere, right? I know you'd be tempted. We're going to wrap this up, but I've got some good stuff for you, okay, to take away, kind of pull it all together, something really useful for you to go away with, kind of the summary of this, okay? Just to let you know, how do you work with us if you want to work with us, right? We do three things. We do consulting. So you go, gosh, I would love help unpacking this and figuring this out. We do programs, standalone programs that are designed to deliver specific target outputs. We have those, and we work to develop bespoke pipelines. So kind of taking that funnel approach and say, well, how do we design something that's specific? And it won't always be just what we do, but it could bring in elements of other people and what you're doing, but designed specifically and purposefully to deliver those KPIs. If you want to talk to us, if you want to talk through this, you can get in touch, you can also scan the QR code. That'll take you directly to a booking link where you can schedule a call with me and Rachel. And we just talk through it and try to figure it out, right? And meet you where you're at and do the best we can to help, right? So if you are interested in kind of exploring this further and how we can specifically help, please do get in touch. Love to talk. As you might guess and might be able to see, it's something that we are quite passionate about and love the opportunity to explore it from different perspectives. So in summary, the key takeaways that so we're trying to get you, we got some different frameworks here and some different actions. So you've got the behavior triangle, focus on motivation, capacity, skills, something that you can think about doing. What are the levels of motivation, skills, capacity in your population? Start thinking about that. The pipeline, some action that you can take, gain clarity in your KPIs, map out your programs, identify gaps and opportunities. The talent agency matrix, start to think about the characteristics of game changers, create learner profiles, think about different types of approaches that will be relevant for different profiles. Thinking about the action zone and considering to what degree that your existing programs are they designed to deliver action, drive action. And finally, think about where you will start. If you were to start somewhere, what would be that one specific place, that one specific challenge you try to overcome, and how might you put together a pilot program to genuinely try to see if you can solve that problem? Because once you can solve it on a small scale, you can start to consider how you scale it out and solve it on a bigger scale. Okay. This is kind of the distillation of what we've been learning over the last 12 months. Okay. And what I'd like you to do, because I'd like to know how we did, right? We build evaluation into everything that we do, even things like this. So in the chat box, if you could, and there's one last thing I'm going to share with you before you leave, so stick around if you can. In the chat box, 0 to 10, this 1 hour that we had, 0, man, this was a waste of time. I wish I hadn't done this. I'm never coming to another one of your things again. 10 is that was a fantastic use of time, super valuable, really helpful. Where were you? 0 to 10, your honest feedback would be super helpful. And then after you answer that, is just again to see what kind of resonated for you. Is there one action from today that you kind of picked up from today that you would go, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. I think that's a good idea. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Oh, good. And finally, before we say goodbye, we have more to share. This was kind of pretty high level stuff, right? In each of these different areas, there is so much more to dig into. We could do webinars on each of these areas specifically, right? The next webinar that we're going to do in a month's time is around a pilot program that we did with involving 6 Scottish universities designed to identify commercial opportunities, working with professional service staff and researchers to identify commercial opportunities and accelerate the development and how to move those forward quickly. Now, this is the program that Rachel referenced, the 90-minute, highly impactful program. We're going to share with you exactly how we did it, and you guys can take away, insights and learnings from that, so you can apply them in your situation if it makes sense. Okay, so with that, I thank you very much for your time. Again, busy people, very generous of you to give an hour of your time. Hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully it was useful. Do get in touch if you'd like to talk. But that's all we have for you today. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and we'll hopefully see you next time. Thanks again.